It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp, and we're so excited to be back for Season 6 and continue bringing you outstanding ideas and thought leaders and different ways of thinking. So don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to want to miss any of it. This week, I'm joined by returning guest and one of my favorite guests, Dean West of Association Laboratory. And we're going to be talking about looking forward 2024, data decisions, and what's next. Welcome to episode 229. It's Monday, February 19th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Cecilia Supp, and to our global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. In the United States today, it's President's Day. Originally, we started celebrating the birthday of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. I always thought that was kind of interesting since number 1 and number 16. But on this day, we think of all our presidents and thank them all for their service because, frankly, it's a really hard job and nobody's ever happy. So happy President's Day to all of our past and current president. Anyway, we are here to talk to the president of Association Laboratory, Dean West, one of my favorite returning guests. And he's here to talk about one of my favorite data nerd dives, which is looking forward. And this year it's the, of course, 2024 edition. So Dean, welcome back. Would you like to say hello and tell us something about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Association Laboratories celebrating its 25th year in business this year. So we're doing all sorts of fun stuff. I know I never thought I would be working so long for my own company, but it's a good time. We do research and strategy consulting, of course, but we're the industry leader on the collection of sector research on the association industry itself through our Looking Forward brand. And I frankly encourage everyone to go to our website, associationlaboratory.com, because you can access now 10 different studies via the Looking Forward dashboard for free. And you can customize the data by trade or by professional or by state or by national. You can download it and use that to guide your conversations back to your association. And then, of course, we produce leadership events like our recent healthcare conference. So we've really expanded into a lot of the competency development side, Cecile, and it's been very interesting to learn what works and doesn't work from our association colleagues.
Well, and let me also add happy 25th anniversary.
Thank you very much.
Always enjoyed working at Association Laboratory during the time I was there. Look back on it fondly. So, we had a lot of fun. So,
we did have a lot of fun,
the company's really grown a lot and it really expanded. And it's so wonderful to see this because I remember when Looking Forward first started and it was more of a qualitative study. And now it's grown into this wonderful environmental scanning sector review report that builds on previous data. So, couple of big things to cover. We're not going to dive into everything about the report because we want people to come look at it for themselves and check out the dashboard. But were there any big surprises this year?
I think there was not a big surprise. I think what we're seeing is it's like watching a glacier come towards you. You can see it coming, it's coming closer every day until suddenly you look out your window and it's right beside you. You and I are discussing earlier, for example, Looking Forward has predicted the workforce crisis for over a decade now. That's been top of mind. Vertical integration within industries, mergers and acquisitions, and the impact on the decision to engage, long time. What I found interesting this year, for example, as I was saying, 52% of people indicated the AI was going to have strong implications on their members' lives and stuff like that. And I don't think that should surprise anyone. What should surprise someone is that's from 7 years ago. Now it's more than 70%. So the study itself has become a good predictor of forces we believe will subsequently impact the association business model. Now, I think the biggest surprise, or the thing that's starting to become evident, is not AI. It's not some of the things that are in headlines. It's that one of the things that the implications we discovered out of COVID was people's historical behaviors had been disrupted, where before you might have joined or attended a meeting or all these things you used to do for a year or two got disrupted. And so people are now evaluating what they want to do and where they want to engage with an association. But they're evaluating in an environment where they've never had more choices. And we've estimated basically people who are 30 years and younger have effectively no historical experience with associations. So I have no experience with what associations provide or why they might be of value to me. And I've never had more choices outside of associations to be active, to get educated, to get content and community. So why should I be active with your association? And we see now like a gap between our our millennial and X and baby boomer friends and our young millennial and Z generation friends, where the assumptions behind a lot of associations, frankly, that they're built around may not apply to the next group of people coming. And it's not a generational difference. It's not the way you read about it in books. It's that they don't know who you are, what you do, or why it has value to them. And they're making that decision now with no historical experience with you as an association. And they're making that decision where they've never had more choices.
That's well, and I think, do you think that is a reflection of the way we live now in society? Because we have so many apps, we have so many streaming channels, we have so
Sure.
many options for delivery services. I mean, is that just what this is? Is it a reflection of that, the way we're living?
A little bit. There, there's the old physics thing. A body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays at rest. Mm-hmm. And from a decision-making standpoint, think of paying your bills. You're paying your electric bill, or you're paying your phone bill. Let's use the phone bill. AT&T actually did a study on this. You're paying your phone bill every month, and you're paying it, and it's an auto pay out of your credit card. All of a sudden, they call you and they say, "Hey, how would you like to save money? We've been monitoring your usage, and we think you can save money in this plan." Well, the minute you decide to consider their upgrade or down, whatever it is, you suddenly ask yourself, well, maybe I should look at other carriers. So once you're in decision-making mode, all of a sudden you're thinking about other sources. Do I really go to the meeting? Do I really get value out of that newsletter? Do I really, care whether I'm a part of something that the association's told me about? The minute you're in decision mode, you start to consider alternatives. And there's never been more alternatives. So I think there was a lot of momentum, particularly membership. I've always joined, I've always renewed, and you just write that check or you auto renew it every year. Well, the minute you didn't take advantage of the association, however you'd historically done it, you're in evaluation mode. And right now we have a huge chunk of people, predominantly young professionals, in an evaluation mode, but they're not evaluating between you necessarily. It's not engage with you or not. It's, do I do anything? Where do I get education? Where do I get community? Is it local? Is it national? Is it global? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they've never had more choices out of that pie. Why you? How do you differentiate yourself as an association?
Well, and do you think that the fact that many associations just keep doing the same old, yeah, because that's the way we've always done it, that's that historical thing. But do you think that, and I don't know if this comes out in the data, do you think that they're shifting? Are they trying to shift, or do they think they're just going to keep doing it, and if you build it, they will come?
Well, it's hard is the really big insight. One of the things we discovered a number of years ago, probably 10 years ago, in fact, in conversation with Phil Vicorius, who you know, Cecilia, we were struggling with associations in strategic planning, because one of the things we want to investigate is the relationship between the member and the association. And the trouble we had with boards in particular was they couldn't envision the association being something different than who it had historically been. And so I remember going to a trade association strategic planning retreat after a conversation with Phil at O'Hare very distinctly, and we changed our agenda where it wasn't about, because if you go to a board, you're like, what should you do? They'd say, well, we're a trade association, so we need a trade show, we need a lobbyist. That's what trade associations do. We started asking different questions about strategic roles. What we tried to get at is, all right, what are the issues going on with your industry? Now let's create what a solution to those issues might be and not worry about what you've historically done. And that allowed us to get leaders to think more open-mindedly about how the association becomes a platform for member success. But it was hard. And then the pandemic hits and you say, well, what's the biggest issue? And they say the pandemic. But the issues they had pre-pandemic didn't go away. They just got absorbed into the broader pandemic. And so it's hard to get people with a long history of the association who have a very discrete or finite view of the association to be open-minded about what the association might do. It's just hard. And I think that's one of the struggles right now is leaders don't have a vision for some other thing. So a week ago, we did our healthcare conference. So we do a healthcare CEO strategy summit near O'Hare. We have never, this is our second year we've done it. We've never talked about membership. We've never talked about meetings. The product line of associations isn't the conversation. The conversation is how does the association business model in healthcare fulfill a different role in the life of a physician or a nurse or a healthcare executive? Because you can build product off that once you know what your role is in their lives. And so we have not had any conversations that you would expect to have at an association healthcare CEO summit about all the products of a healthcare association. And I think that's what a lot of associations are going to have to do is start asking ourselves, all right, if I had to set up an association today to be successful, given this competitive environment, given the tools available to me, because you get all the same tools as anyone else, to serve this emerging audience and not serve them based on generational cliches, but on actual audience understanding, what would it look like? What would be similar? What would be different? So my last comment on that subtle change is membership strategies are really community strategies. It's not about bundled benefits that make it easier to buy. It's about creating a professional home for people, a concept we've investigated now for a number of years. That's a very different view of membership than what are the 5 services or newsletters we bundle together and have Cecilia and Dean pay for. And I think we'll see a lot of experimentation on that over the next 5 years in particular.
Well, I certainly hope we do because
that's a good point. I hope so too.
Yeah, it's like because really the nonprofit community overall, the whole profession and people who participate in it at whatever level, whether you're staff or volunteer or supporter, it actually has a very long history in this country. And the problem with that is this model has been put in place back in the 19th century. And we're still doing this 19th century model, like the mini-me chapter model. I know you don't usually test chapters and looking forward, but I love chapters and I talk about this a lot, but that model's got to go. The mini model has got to go because it's really not useful anymore and it's not helpful. And to your point about the number of choices out there, why do both? Why do the chapter and the national? There's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough energy. And these are all the things that we ask of people.
Yeah. When we test the kind of the chapter value proposition, invariably we test as part of the national or global value proposition. Like you have to know which entity of your organization delivers the most value to the person you're trying to serve.
Right.
I think the other issue with some of these groups, frankly, is it's related to chapters and some of these subcomponents is they end up creating very deliberative consensus-based governance systems that take forever to make decisions.
Yes.
And the speed of change in the environment and the dynamic nature of that change does not favor deliberative decision-making. And so, as you and I were talking a little bit earlier, what that does is create opportunities for competitors who are faster. Mm-hmm. And so you develop competitors as an association because you have failed to serve a market segment. That's what your competitor saw. It saw, okay, these CEOs, they're not being served, we'll serve them. This industry, it's not being served, we'll serve them. And they don't need everybody, they just need sufficient people to be active. And so the slower you are at making decisions, the more you use history to guide those decisions, the less likely you are to be successful in a dynamic and competitive environment. And I think I've called it a governance reformation. We need governance reformation that allows for faster, better decisions that continue to incorporate the will of members and other stakeholders. That doesn't mean you have to put them on your board. It means you have to have a mechanism to understand what your members are going through and what they want out of you. And I think we've got some groups that are experimenting with that right now. American College of Surgeons is one of our clients, and they're actively engaged in a Voice of the Surgeon program to do just that, as an example. And others, I think, will follow that lead.
That's a great idea. And, I like that term governance reformation because this data that you gather every year and analyze and compare year over year to show the trends is not going to be helpful if there's not a mechanism in place to act on it. And that's really why we do need that governance reformation. So I do want to be, I don't want to finish our conversation before we talk a little bit more about the workforce trend.
Okay.
Now, you and I, as we were prepping for the episode, we're talking about that, what you found. So could you explain for the audience some of the things that you found in the workforce
Sure.
area? And it is number one again.
Yeah.
And then what were some of the other things you learned from that?
Sure. So the workforce issue has been number one every year for more than a decade, except 1 year when COVID was number one and workforce is number two. And we have a whole domain on workforce. And what's really stood out is one, it's been a continuing issue that presented associations with nothing but opportunities to take advantage of. Very few did, which I think is a missed opportunity. But when there is a workforce issue, particularly one that's decades in the making, okay, and exacerbated by COVID, companies don't just stop. They find substitutes. One way to substitute is with technology. So if you've ever been to McDonald's and ordered via an electronic kiosk, that's what happens when you can't find somebody to work at your McDonald's. Mm-hmm. The other thing we see, and which is now showing up in the data, though, is I want to hire someone for my company, a professional. And since I can't get somebody with the optimal qualifications, I get somebody with sufficient qualifications. And what that creates is what we call profession on profession combat. For those in healthcare, scope of practices would be an obvious arena for that. I don't hire an accountant because I can't find one. So I hire a mathematician because at the end of the day, I need math done. Okay. Or I hire AI to do it, and I put in an AI solution because it's a numbers game. Does column A match column B? To oversimplify it. So what we're seeing now is competition between professional communities. That's the profession combat. But where that shows up was a dramatic increase in competition between associations. Because now the actuaries and the accountants their members are fighting each other over the one job, as an example. And the companies, which are larger, will train up whoever they hire because they're larger, more resource intensive. They don't need your help if they can get me close on the math, I can teach you to do the rest as a company. And so we're seeing a much heavier competition between the associations, national associations in particular, that represent those professional communities. So on the looking forward, that comes up literally it comes up in a competition between professionals with different training, and there's a graph that'll show you the uptick. It was big last year, it was sustained this year.
Wow, that's so, and is that similar? Because I also, first of all, I have gotten to go to the healthcare conference that you put on. I got to go a few years ago. It was excellent. So if you're in the healthcare area, check it out next time. But working in healthcare policy for a good chunk of my career as well, you see that professional combat. I love that, by the way. That's such a great term, profession on profession combat. But it's sort of like between like allied healthcare professionals, like audiologists and otolaryngologists. Like, who do you go to? Do you think is that similar, or am I mixing things?
Well, it's similar and you're mixing things. So, so within healthcare, there are very strong incentives to hire to use the cheapest individual that can provide the service. Okay. And it's very distinct in healthcare. Okay. My healthcare friend, our healthcare friends say, no, it's not. It's all very clear. Yeah. But but you get licensed to do a thing. Okay. But it's based on certification, scope of practice in healthcare. I have a license in this, you have a license something different. Maybe there's some gray area between us, but what we can do, what we're allowed to do in the setting is fairly defined. In other professions, it's more competency based. So like, if you know how to do the thing, do I care if you're an electrical engineer or some subset of electrical engineering or mechanical engineer? Like, is there, so think of a Venn diagram of professions. And I'm a company, at the end of the day, I need somebody to churn out some things. So I've done what I can in technology, but now I need someone who can, maybe I hire a data scientist instead of an actuary because I can't find an actuary. So I've got one actuary to make sure everything is fine. I've got 5 data scientists that actually do the math because actuarial science is a risk modeling. It's just a math test. I say it like I could do it, by the way, and I can't. So what you're seeing is, as a company, you're not hiring people who are qualified to do the work. You're hiring people who are sufficiently qualified to do the work, and you're less concerned about the letters behind their name.
Got it.
And the difference being, and this is where they mix, and is when you're required by law to have those letters. Mm-hmm. And so if I want to be a physician and practice as a physician, there's a very distinct training and validation competency process, to practice in the state of wherever, but in a lot of groups there are not. But
and then you get, and then you open that door to the whole state licensure conundrum, which it really is, because it varies wildly from state to state.
Yeah.
But this has been really a great overview of looking for data. And I think it's so cool that you have predicted several things that actually
it's funny.
It's amazing. You're like the Nostradamus of associations. So
there we go. That's what I needed.
That's gonna be the hook for the 25th, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. I think I was trying to think of it. We predicted the workforce in 2012, M&A activity in 2012, for-profit competition to associations in 2014. Government is becoming more and more of a challenge structurally, not politically. That was 2017. AI was 2017, and changing audience and their corresponding needs was 2021. So it's got a pretty good track record. And so the way for folks to use this is to go to Looking For a Dashboard, download, you can separate like trade and professional. You can go by, if you just want state groups, customize it. There's almost 20 different ways you can customize the data, but use it as a guide. Give it to your staff team, give it to your board, and say, this is what association execs across the spectrum of our industry think is an issue. Is this an issue for us? If so, how? And you just use it to narrow the lines within that conversation. It guides content choices. It's basically a needs assessment of the association sector. And so looking forward, impact is the environmental scan. What are the issues impacting members? In about a month and a half, 2 months, we do looking forward solutions. We test over 130 solutions to get a sense of what people are trying out there and what's working and not. And then we're going to do, there's a little influx. We'll probably do a third study highlighting the challenges created by the environment, and we'll link those three. So what's impacting members? What are we doing about it? What are the challenges to success? Is going to be the cycle. And that's new. That'll be new this year. But it's really a lot of data. Yeah.
That's great. Well, that is sort of a closing thought, but I always like to ask my guests for a closing thought. So what might be something you would like to pass on to the audience that you've learned from looking at this year's data and comparing it to previous years?
I think just how exciting it is to be in association, leadership and management right now. I've been working in associations almost 40 years now, and a lot of association management used to be, you did your annual conference, you did your fall day on the hill, you did your newsletter, you did your journal, and next year you repeated it. And there wasn't much change. Okay. But now the environment is changing dramatically, and it's going to challenge us to rethink the role of associations on a wide variety of fronts. That's really fun to do. That's much more fun than doing the same old every year. We have tools that you and I would have dreamed of having, when we began our careers, that would allow us to do things we never and just anticipated. So we have all the same advantages everybody else has. We have communities that have a history with us as associations, and the executive class that's going to define the next association business model is currently at work, and that's us and our colleagues, and that's much more fun than just doing the same old. The key to us being successful, though, is to get out of looking backwards and pretending anything will go back to 2018 or 19, and to actively and intentionally come to some agreement within our associations on what the future facing our members looks like, the implications on their lives, and the role the association plays as a platform for their success. And 25 years from now, we'll know if we're successful.
Well, hopefully we'll be around to see that.
I know. So we can get applauded when we walk across stage. Yeah.
That's right. Probably more like wheel, but that's another story.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Well, Dean, always love talking with you. Glad you could come back.
Thanks for having me.
How can people get in touch with you if they'd like to ask you some questions about the data?
So first, you go to the data. It's associationallaboratory.com. It's called the Looking Forward dashboard. You have to register once, so you never have to register again. But it's free to access, free to use, free to download. Encourage people to come to their own conclusions on it. If anybody wants to ask me questions about it, I'm at dwest, at associationallaboratory.com. And feel free to shoot me an email. Interested in other people's perceptions and what people are doing with it. There's other content on our website as well. We're doing our best to try and capture what's impacting the association business model and what people are doing about it, and always open to people's suggestions on how to improve those things.
That's great. Well, and congratulations again on the 25th
Thanks.
anniversary,
Yeah,
but
exciting.
also so many years of looking forward. I still remember the first time we did it, and it's really grown so much. So kudos on that.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Wonderful. So, okay, well, everyone, we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next time with another exciting episode. So don't forget to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss anything coming up. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. If you're looking for CAE education, check out Rogue Tulips Education. It is rebranded from the 501c League program, but it's still the same great content. You can find that at the 501cleague.net. So thanks again for joining us. And on behalf of Dean and myself, we'll see you next time.